What drives a person to risk everything for a single reckless act? In the quiet of our small town, where the air smells of hay and the stars burn bright, one woman's choice set off a chain of events that would unravel lives and leave scars deeper than the flames she ignited. This is the story of Karen, a woman whose defiance lit a fire both literal and figurative that consumed more than she could have ever imagined. The Miller farm had stood on the edge of Willow Creek for 3 generations. My family's barn, weathered but proud, was the heart of our land. It housed our tools, our memories, and the dreams we'd built from the soil up. I'm Ethan Miller, and alongside my wife, Clara, we'd poured our lives into keeping the farm alive. Our days were long, filled with the rhythm of planting, harvesting, and caring for our animals. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Across the dirt road lived Karen Voss. She wasn't always the kind of neighbor you'd dread. When she moved in 2 years ago, she seemed friendly enough, brought over a pie, smiled at our kids, Lily and Max, when they played in the yard. But something shifted in Karen over time. Maybe it was the isolation of rural life or the weight of her own unspoken burdens. She grew sharp, her words barbed, her patience thin. She'd complain about our tractor's noise, our dogs barking, even the way our sunflowers leaned over her fence. Clara called it Karen being Karen, and we laughed it off, hoping she'd soften. But Karen didn't soften. She hardened. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a dry September evening, the kind where the air crackles with the promise of autumn. Clara and I were in the kitchen, planning the harvest, when Max burst through the door, his face pale. "Mom, Dad, there's a fire," he shouted, pointing toward the barn. My heart sank as I ran outside, the glow of flames licking the horizon. Our barn was surrounded by a haze of smoke, and at its edge stood Karen, her silhouette stark against the firelight, a pile of branches burning dangerously close to the structure. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled, sprinting toward her. Clara was behind me, dialing 911, her voice trembling. Karen turned, her face a mix of defiance and something else, something wild, almost unhinged. "It's just a bonfire," she snapped, tossing another stick into the flames. "I'm on my property. You don't own the damn air, Ethan." "Your property?" I shouted, my voice hoarse with panic. "That fire's 10 feet from our barn. The wind's picking up, you'll burn the whole place down." The barn held not just tools but our hay reserves, enough to feed our livestock through winter. One spark, one gust, and it could all be gone. Karen didn't flinch. "Maybe you should have thought about that before letting your dogs crap in my yard," she spat, her eyes glinting with a grudge I didn't know she'd been nursing. It was absurd, petty, but the flames were real, creeping closer to the barn's wooden walls. I grabbed a shovel, trying to smother the fire, but it was spreading too fast. Sirens wailed in the distance, a small mercy in a night spiraling out of control. The fire department arrived just as the flames licked the barn's corner. They doused the blaze, saving most of the structure, but not before the heat had warped the siding and scorched a wall. The cops hauled Karen away, her protests echoing into the night. "This is my land. You can't do this," she screamed, her voice raw with fury. Clara held Lily and Max close, their faces streaked with tears as they watched the chaos unfold. The next morning, the damage was clear. The barn was still standing, but the repairs would cost thousands. Worse, the hay inside was ruined, a loss we couldn't afford. I sat with Clara at the kitchen table, our coffee cold, our spirits colder. "Why would she do this?" Clara whispered, her hands shaking. "What did we ever do to her?" I didn't have an answer, but then came the twist we hadn't seen coming, a piece of the puzzle that shifted everything. Our neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, hobbled over that afternoon, his cane tapping the dirt path. Jenkins was a recluse, rarely seen outside his ramshackle house, but he'd been watching that night. "Ethan, Clara," he said, his voice gravelly, "there's something you need to know about Karen." He paused, his eyes distant. "She wasn't just burning branches. She was burning letters. Dozens of them. I saw her night after night, reading them by her porch light, crying. Last night, She just snapped. Letters? It didn't make sense. Jenkins handed me a singed envelope he'd found in the ditch, the paper brittle but legible. It was addressed to Karen, postmarked years ago, from someone named Daniel. The words were faded, but they spoke of love, regret, and a promise to return, a promise that, from the look of it, was never kept. Jenkins shook his head. I think she's been carrying that pain a long time. Doesn't excuse what she did, but it might explain it. Clara's eyes softened, just for a moment, before hardening again. She could have killed U.S. Jenkins. Pain or no pain, that's no excuse. I agreed, but the revelation gnawed at me. Karen wasn't just the spiteful neighbor we'd pegged her for. She was broken, her anger a mask for something deeper. Still, her fire had nearly destroyed our livelihood. Sympathy couldn't undo that. The legal battle that followed was swift and brutal. Karen faced charges of reckless endangerment and property damage. In court, she sat stone-faced, her lawyer arguing she'd meant no harm, that it was just a bonfire. But the judge wasn't buying it. The prosecution presented photos of the scorched barn, testimony from the fire chief about the dry conditions, and my own account of the terror that night. The gavel fell, and Karen was hit with a $180,000 fine covering our losses, repairs, and punitive damages. She'd also served community service, her freedom curtailed but not erased. I thought the verdict would bring relief, but it didn't. As we left the courtroom, I caught Karen's eye. For a split second, I saw not the defiant woman who'd cursed us out but someone hollowed out. Her life reduced to ash as surely as her bonfire had threatened ours. Clara squeezed my hand, her voice low. We won, Ethan. Why doesn't it feel like it? Months passed, and the farm limped back to life. We rebuilt the barn, scraped by with loans, and replanted what we could. Karen's house went dark. She moved away, unable to pay the fine and keep her home. The town buzzed with gossip, some calling her a villain, others pitying her. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, yes, but also a nagging sorrow. Her pain had spilled over, burning us all, but who had failed her first? One evening, as I walked the fields with Clara, we found a single sunflower growing where Karen's bonfire had been. It shouldn't have survived the heat, yet there it was, defiant and bright. Clara knelt beside it, her fingers brushing its petals. Maybe this is her apology, she said softly. I wanted to believe it, but the ache in my chest told me otherwise. Some wounds don't heal with flowers. Karen's fire had taken more than hay and wood. It had burned away the illusion that we could live side by side with someone and not see their pain. It had shown us how fragile trust is, how one reckless moment can ripple through lives. We'd survived, but at what cost? The barn stood, but our sense of safety, our belief in neighbors, was gone. And Karen? She was out there somewhere, carrying her own ashes, her story unfinished. Nd.